Well, hey, Pirates, welcome back to the Creator Capitalist podcast. Today is a unique day because not only are Pirate Eddie and Pirate Christopher not here, but we're sitting with 5 of our favorite moms and creator capitalists here to weigh in on what it looks like to be a mom and a creator capitalist. We're with Lydia, Alexis, Melissa, Jennifer, and Mary Kathryn, and they are all category Pirates Academy alumni, fabulous creator capitalists. So, welcome to the podcast, everyone. Let's go ahead and start.
Thank
And if you
you.
guys just want to go around, we'll start with Melissa and say how many kids you have, how old they are, and then we'll kind of jump into some questions about the topic.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Bri. I have two kids. I have a 17-year-old and a 19-year-old, and I also have two older stepkids in their 30s. So, and yeah, they're very, very busy and keep us on our toes.
As they do, Alexis. What about you? What kids do you have?
Yeah, I've got two boys, 14 and 18. The 14-year-old turns 15 in a month. So, and then I also have a dog, which is kind of fair to add in.
Yes, it is. It is.
Absolutely.
Lydia, what about you?
I have two kids. My son is 21 and graduating from college in a few months. And then my daughter is 17, will turn 18 at the end of the month, and she's graduating from high school. So it's a big year.
Wonderful.
Really,
That's crazy.
a really
Jennifer?
very neat time right now.
Yes, very
I
exciting.
have two young adults. They are currently 18 and 19, just about to be 19 and 20. So freshmen and finishing freshman year and sophomore year of college.
All right. And Mary, last up.
My goodness, I rounded out with two boys aged 24 and 27. So my goodness, 3 more years and I'll have a 30-year-old. I cannot even, that is just not even possible. But yeah,
I'm struggling with a 20-year-old. So
Me
it's
too.
really, it's that phase, it's mirrored in your business. Each of the stages of your kids are mirrored in your business if you're an entrepreneur. And now I've created the thing and I've let it go out into the world.
Yeah. Oh, Mary. It's so interesting to see because I actually analogize a lot of the shifts and seasons of my career through the school years. It's really kind of interesting of what was happening. And then to think I'll be an empty nester in the fall is just so interesting. It's a new period of life.
I dream of being an empty nester.
it's
Watch
different.
Watch what you wish for.
Well, I want to live a life like Bri and travel all over. Thus,
you
the
go.
dog kind of ruins that plan.
Yeah.
But the 14-year-old who's a freshman in high school, he has said that when he goes off to college, he wants me to still stay in the States.
Yeah.
That's very
so-
nice.
Asked me to stay in this house.
Yeah.
Mm,
Same
no.
here.
Yeah,
Same here. And
they,
I
like,
said
they
no.
like to come back
I
to
said,
the
see
same
ya.
place.
I sold
Yeah.
that. Bye. On to the next.
I love
That's
that.
my plan.
I like that. My 17-year-old is she's in her last year. She's at boarding school, so she's back and forwards in the holidays, and that has been a big change for us, but fantastic for her in terms of how she's grown, which has been amazing. So it's so it's kind of half empty nest with one child, which is weird.
I had the same thing. My daughter took herself off to boarding school. So
Yeah.
she was back and forth.
Yeah.
So she left at 14, but she still hasn't left.
Yeah.
And she comes home and like, what are you doing here?
But
And she's a long way away. She's in Texas, and my son is just down in Santa Barbara. So I'm
Yeah.
in California. And he can come home whenever he wants to. It's a 4-hour drive, 4.5-hour drive.
And this is the thing when we grow independent young people is that they do choose. Mine chose as well. She was like, well, I want to go to boarding school. And I'm like, okay. And same 14, so she's in her last 3 years at
Yeah.
school. And so it's a whole world of resilience that they open themselves up to when they choose that.
Well, and I think also just being able to start building those different relationships. We are fortunate to have very good schools around us, but my daughter took biotech. She took neuroscience. She took experimental literature. It was like going to college, not being in a traditional high school. And that's what she needed.
Yeah.
It's been really interesting just to see how she's built those relationships, both with the faculty where she was at school and with friends. And now that she's gone off to her next place, how is she continuing those relationships, because it's so different than when I was in school, right? I didn't have social media. Don't talk to anybody from high school,
Yes.
really. And I only talked to a handful of people from college. But she's able to keep in touch with all of them.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's that you're absolutely spot on. That's that stepping stone, that first stepping stone of relationship capital is is kind of high school in a way. And particularly when kids do go away to things like boarding school, they get this exposure to such a range of people from so many different locations as well, and backgrounds. It's such a wonderful sort of place. And as part of the Creator Catalyst, reading the book and being involved in this whole program, we've been able to have these amazing conversations with our daughter about that, and just saying this is where it kind of starts, because I've got mates that I went to primary school with that I still know now that are in different professions. And just recently I called on someone who to send some stuff information to around some funding that we're doing with our business at the moment, and it was and he's a guy that I know from 30 years ago. And so that's to be able to say to our kids, hey, this is where this stuff starts at at that level is actually really good to join the dots.
It's funny because I have those same conversations now.
Yeah, I was going to say, Melissa, I completely agree. I'm 52 and we have a text chain of like 27 of us from high school, and we're pretty active on it. And then, just yesterday, I happened to see one of my college friends because I was in the city, and, I've got my grad school friends. Even the people, I went to a reunion for my grad school a couple years ago, and people started saying, oh, aloha, Alexis, aloha, Alexis. And that was something that I brought into my business. It wasn't something I was doing at business school 20 years ago, even though I am born and raised in Hawaii, like it's legit, but it wasn't something that I was really saying on a daily basis, as opposed to now I am. So those relationships, especially when you have a shared experience of going to school, those are so important. And that is the basis of relation capital. And I think those virtual classes are missing that opportunity. There is something to be said about going to campus and sitting in a room with people and having those conversations, especially, you could have a virtual, right, an online course, but if it's on your own pace, then you're not interacting with the other students. And that's the problem. A lot of the Gen Zers, especially, we've got to get them interacting with people and building those relationships, because that is what is going to carry you through. Even my younger son just applied to Dairy Queen, and one of the other kids that works there is in his scouting troop. And he put in a good word like, hey, I've seen what he does at Scouts. He's amazing. Now, he didn't get the job because he's on the football team, but, like you win some, you lose some. The relationship capital is absolutely alive and well. And these kids, they need help learning how to do it.
But I was going to add, Alexis, I also think that what's interesting is they have this shared experience of, many of them lived through the pandemic. They were in high school or in school in the pandemic, and that experience of, having to navigate that, I think kind of does bring them together, even though they may not have the luxury all the time of being in front of people. But I think there is sort of this interesting approach to how they build relationships digitally between all of these different tools, or even just those that shared experience. I think in the book I was remembered that chapter about this idea of shared experiences when go through that, and how when you went through that, how it brings you together in that relationship, right? For us to nurture them is that idea. So I think there's two things, right? Is the idea of being in person and what that means, but then the idea also of how you build that in this digital AI world now. And what does that mean? I think is so fascinating. And I look at like my kids, even though my son's been in another state or my daughter's here, just the way that they have these. Okay, here's a great example. My daughter now has her roommate for where she's going to go to college. And I said, oh, how'd you meet? And she said, oh, we formed a friendship on Instagram over time. And when I went to college, I didn't like, I didn't have, I knew my other friend from my town, like where friends that I knew in college at UCLA, but I didn't even know how to like find a roommate. At the time it was so different. I'm going to be 56, but it was not, it just was such a different time.
Well, I think what's interesting is, go ahead.
I was just going to say, as I, they talk about that, like early on in the book about, the digital native versus the analog native, right? And how we say, like, go and like see your friends in person. They're like, but I am hanging out with my friends because they're hanging out online. And that's how
I think what's interesting is I've met Lydia in person.
Yes.
I have not met the rest of you in person, but we all have a shared background in having been through the academy.
Yep.
And so we have that instant relationship, and we're all analog natives. I think, other than Bri.
Yes.
But I think that's really interesting. And I guess, what I'm curious about is, as a parent, do you think it makes any difference being online or not online, or how do you parent differently? Do you mother differently?
Jennifer, I gotta jump in on this because I was raising my kids at the beginning of this whole thing, right? They straddle both sides. They aren't completely native digitals, however they are now, of course. But I think they pulled me more into the digital world when they were younger. I was interacting with the things that I knew they would interact with. And I kept them grounded in the real world. So it was kind of both. But what I think is most interesting about Creator Capitalist is we are all creator capitalists. We're all creating our businesses. We're all doing all these amazing things in the future with AI. And I think it's our jobs to introduce this concept to our kids and see where they might fit. So when I started my first business, I looked at my then 16-year-old and I started a podcast. And I said, hey, I've got this thing that I'm doing. And I was getting tired of producing my own podcast, being a superhero solopreneur kind of person. And I'm like, hey, do you want to learn this skill? And I'll pay you to do it. And he's like, sure. And so I taught him how to be a podcast producer. And then he took that on and went out, and I helped him create relationships to find clients for that business. And that doesn't mean that's where he's going to stay for the rest of his life. He didn't, obviously. That was at 16. He's now 27. But that's the beauty of being a creator capitalist mom, is that we can introduce and see where our kids might flourish, what their superpowers might be, and help them use AI, stay grounded, et cetera, to become their own creator capitalist.
Yeah, I agree, Mary Kathryn.
Absolutely.
I mean, with the kids graduating, all their friends will start talking about jobs and what are they going to do. And I keep going back to creator capitalist because I tell them, like, you have these extraordinary opportunity to do this, to actually be your own creator capitalist in this AI world. They're all very worried about jobs. I mean, for sure. That's a big thing. And then I start going back to the 4 pillars, right? I say you built all these relationships, whether it was through your alumni association or network, and the students or the parents, like all the parents that were on the football field, at the volleyball games. Like, we know all these kids,
Absolutely.
right? All of them want to help the kids. Like, all of them want to elevate and amplify. But it does go back to building those relationships and being comfortable reaching out and asking for help. And that's okay, asking for support. Or I think of, your reputational capital. I mean, that, as they're very young still, but being able to cultivate that over time with the massive difference they make for others is something I try to keep reminding them of. And even students I mentor, where I keep bringing that up, like, what is the difference you're making for others? And then the financial capital, that's a big one, right? Is how do you build the runway or even start saving? And that's a tough one when, everything you pay for is on your phone. It's probably harder to manage than we did with the checkbook, but I think you have to think about that. And then the last one, intellectual property, is what is that thing that is uniquely yours? And I think they have such a tremendous opportunity to create that is so liberating. I don't know. I feel the same. I think it's our sort of responsibility to impart this and share this wisdom that is making such a big difference, I think, for all of us.
It's financial capital that has my oldest moving back in with me this month.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting is a word. Yeah.
I worry about financial capital. That's the one that I worry about a lot.
Well, and the reality is, it is so easy because of all of the digital currencies going around and the false narrative of being able to make huge amounts of money as influencers and that it's easy, right? It's not. It's hard work. And then, of course, there's, the not so great sites that a lot of girls are getting sucked into, and then there's the online betting, right? That's becoming a
Yeah.
problem. And especially when it seems innocent, like, a fantasy league and they're getting hooked. There's a lot of dangers. And then you combine that with the amount of ADHD and impulsivity that exists in the younger generations, you can have the potential for a huge mess. Now, you can also have the potential for amazing creator capitalism. And it's just about like, with that prefrontal cortex not being fully formed until 25, it's really, really hard for these kids. And I feel for them. In Scouts, I'm a rank advancement coordinator, and I see these amazing kids that do incredible things, that know how to take care of a team in an emergency. But there's so much that they have access to that it's so overwhelming for them to try and figure out where to go next or what do they want to be. And then they also believe that there is just a higher worth than a minimum wage job. So it's funny because I've always been like risk taker and, early adopter and what have you, but there's a foundational traditionalist in me that you got to work, like go work for another company and learn and see and understand, like, okay, why did you not get hired? It's easier for a manager to have somebody who doesn't require a work permit, which then has limited hours that you can work during the school year, especially, like think about it from a business standpoint. But I think these kids have a far higher understanding of what it is to run a business than we ever did because
I would
they can access it.
Yeah.
I would 100% agree with that because I see both our children who live and breathe like, 4 a.m. starts and 1 a.m. calls to 5 different continents at the same time. And they see us working, 18 long, long hour days. And they sort of, I think they appreciate that the spoils of being a child of a creator capitalist come from really hard work. And yes, you can do your you can do that sort of groundwork, which everybody does when they, start out and do your supermarket work or those sort of first few hours where you sort of cut your teeth on your first, what was used to be a paper pay packet is now they appreciate that because they see what it's like to actually to grow a business, to start a business, grow a business, and then scale a business, and use all of those creative capital skills and that requires a lot of hard work and a lot of long hours. So I love when they get exposure to both sides, and it's like I can work these 5 hours a week while I'm at school, and I get this much money. But if I want to, if I want to sort of take advantage of these amazing, skills that I am growing, how do I do that? And there's a lot of a lot of hard work in doing that, but then also a lot of tapping into relationships as you move forward.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the unique things about all of our children is
Yeah.
that they are all children of entrepreneurs
Yeah.
and people who are starting businesses or have started businesses. And they can see the great opportunities that brings, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
worked all the way through having children. And I was fortunate we were a digital company, so I worked from home. And so I was here when they left for school. My commute was walking them to school and back. And then we were fortunate that we had a nanny who could help in the afternoons and that kind of thing. And then we were always home for dinner. That, as opposed to some of my friends who work and they maybe were there in the morning, probably were not there for dinner, struggle to make all the events. I mean, at least when I was a kid, my dad worked for IBM. He didn't come to my sporting events during the week,
You know,
right?
yeah.
I think that's different for what our kids are seeing and then what their expectations are. Sitting and talking, like my two kids are in many ways very different. One is on a very traditional academic path, and she's trying to figure out what's that going to do now in the world of AI. The other one is in college, but he's probably the kid that's going to be successful because he's got tons of relationships with people across many different fields. He's interested in lots of things. He thinks the idea of having to major in something is stupid because he says, he's a TA in the engineering lab. He's a political science major. I mean, he can build anything. He was off school for 3 weeks with mono. He got back, and the engineering professor was waiting for him going, both the lathes are broken. Every 3D printer is broken. Can you get them back online? The seniors have their senior projects due in 3 weeks. I mean, it was like, okay. And then, so he understands that intellectual capital in a way that a lot of people don't, because he's going, well, of course I'm building intellectual capital. Like, they came to me and asked me to be the TA for the engineering lab, even though I'm not an engineer. And they had to go get special permission for him to be the TA because he's not an engineer. But he hung out in the engineering lab because he used to work in the auto shop because he loves cars. And so he had to get machine shop qualified. It's really obvious when you look at it in hindsight how he got there. And so he's trying to figure out, what's the point of college exactly, other than to have a piece of paper that I can show to people that says I've just graduated from college? He seems like, this is kind of dumb.
Yeah.
I said, yeah, it is kind of dumb, but the rules of the world are generally, if you have a degree, you get paid better. And in my house, you're either in school full-time, you're working full-time, or you're in school part-time and working part-time. Figure it out, not my problem.
You know, you bring up a really good point with our, we're able to be here for our kids. So when I moved out to the burbs, my youngest really started to struggle. He was only 3 at the time. And I was working for corporate, for big multi-billion-dollar company. I had to ask permission to go and volunteer in in the older one's classroom, for like a 40-minute or hour and a half. And I was one of the most productive people. And I was in my 40s thinking, why do I have to ask permission to go and volunteer every once in a while? And, a few years in, they laid me off. So I didn't have to ask permission anymore. And I spent a year trying to find another job, doing marketing and strategy. And I just wasn't seeing what I wanted. And that's when I decided to start my business. And it was, I get to do what I want, with who I want, when I want, and I don't have to ask permission from anybody. And so my kids were 6. My business turns 8 this week. So they were, 6 and 9 when I started my business. And so they started to see, but the best part was being able to walk them to elementary school when they allowed me to. Independence.
Yeah, do that when you get a chance
I love
because it
that.
stops.
But it was really great, and I was able to volunteer, and that's how you get to know their friends, and that's how you also get to know their teachers and their administration. And the volunteer years, like, it's elementary school, and here elementary school goes to 5th grade. That's it. And middle schools, you can sort of, but, not as much. And also the kids don't want you there. As opposed to, when you're in 1st or 2nd grade and you show up, your kids are so excited to see you. And that's important. And it's important to have those relationships and to be able not only to just be involved in the community, but your kids see it because they do. They take in what you do without you necessarily saying, hey, look at what I'm doing. So it's really, it's hard. Unfortunately, we're still at a place in society where the mom typically takes on the brunt of the work. The mom is the one responsible for the activities, for the religion, for the healthcare, for the education. And then let's throw in a house to manage on top of that, as well as maybe, keeping in touch with all of the family members. Don't forget the holiday card. There's so much that falls on the woman, even if it's a dual income household. And what you find is a lot of 40 and 50-year-old women who are burned out because they haven't had time to put themselves first. We always put our kids first. And okay, I shouldn't say always, but it is common for a mom to put her kids first, or maybe to put her spouse first. And one day a year, AKA Mother's Day, is not enough. And so for us as women, we have to kind of tell society to fuck off and set the boundaries and be clear and put our own oxygen mask on first so that we can have our creator capitalist, creativity happening. And we can feel fulfilled about what we're doing and the value that we're creating and providing to our clients as we are missionaries, not mercenaries.
Well, Alexis, I love that. So, especially because we're talking about creator capitalist on the Creator Capitalist podcast.
Yeah.
Just like you said with your oxygen mask, we can't help our kids become creator capitalists until we help ourselves and understand this process ourselves and dig into our own superpower and our relationships and our finances and all those things. And it doesn't mean we have to get them all perfect before we talk to our kids about it, but we take them along on this messy, sometimes failure producing lessons type of adventure. And I think that is the most exciting part of the whole thing. We get to show them the mistakes we make, the lessons we learn, the way that you can navigate this. Again, the only word I can think of is messy, because when you're a parent, it's just messy. Just is. There's no cleanliness about it.
So true.
At least not
I
in
don't
my
know, Mary.
mind.
I mean, my kids are perfect. My life
Well,
is
hey, I'm going to have to
peachy.
come to your house, Alexis, and see how it's done, because it's not that way. But now I can keep my house however I want it, because they're 24 and 27 and on their own.
Yeah.
But that's really the beauty of how we can use this amazing gift that these category pirates gave us, is to do it in real time. And now I'm getting emails from people like Peter Diamandis. I don't know if you follow him. That's basically talking about the future is AI controlling everything we do. And we don't even have to ask AI in the future. AI will know based on our aura ring whether we need the temperature lower or higher in our room when we walk in, or whether we need a nap in our cyber cab when we get into it to go somewhere because we didn't sleep very well last night. I mean, that's the world that our kids are going to be living in. And so if we navigate it, either before or with them, we can take the mistakes, the lessons, the successes, and help them find their way in this new world. I mean, that to me is
I think one of the things that I think I struggled with when the kids were younger is that my kids are 13 months apart. And the role that I played in the company that we had at this time was everything but sales. Nominally because I wasn't very nice and not very good with people. So I stayed in the background, and I made everything run, which is great because I'm really, really good at that. I am definitely an organizational freaky lawyer in that way, but I really didn't work on building those while I was working and the kids were young. It took me a really long time to figure out what my superpower. I spent, like Alexis said, right? I was running the household, looking after two children. My ex-husband traveled all the time, all over the world. He was rarely home. I was trying to run this business. My parents live nearby. They are elderly. My mother requires an immense amount of attention, even though she is perfectly healthy. And that I really struggled with it and I was working. And when we had mothers that worked for us, I love employing mothers. Like I would only employ mothers if I could. And what we did when their kids, they felt like I need to stop working because my kids need me home, was we reduced their hours. We gave them flex hours. Anything you can do to just stay in. And I would sit and have the conversation saying, hey, look, if you want to quit and go look after your kids, I totally get it. If that's where you think you need to be full time, but they are going to be done with elementary school in X number of years, and they're going to be in secondary school, then they'll need you in a different way, but you will have been out of the workforce for 5, 6, 7, 10 years. How are you going to get back into the workforce doing this if this is what you think you want to continue to do? And the answer is, I don't know if they can. I mean, in talking to lawyers and accountants and consultants, doctors, if you take 5 to 10 years off, can you really rebuild those? I mean, you're going to be taking off time when you're going to be making partner at some of those places. And I think it's really hard, even if you have to be super conscious of it when you are working full time. Because that's what I now say to my kids was, I was not conscious of having to take that time off, right? I was just doing the best I could to keep my shit together. And the idea of going and building relationship capital, I could barely build relationships with the other parents in my kids' school. And that's partially because I'm not super great at it. I don't love it, but I was working. Yeah. That's where I was. And so I was not volunteering in the classroom, mostly because I'm not good at it and I don't have patience for it. I was not coaching a sports team or participating in other things because I'm just not good with little kids. Like, I love my teenagers. They're a blast. Them now as young adults, I really enjoy their company. But when they were 3, oh my God, I was so glad to have a nanny. Like, here, please. And we still talk to the nannies. Like, she was awesome and amazing. And the kids still talk to her. We all have to recognize our strengths. Mine is not little children, but I don't know what you do. I don't know how you do it unless you're really conscious.
Well, I think with the introduction of AI, like I saw a commercial, because all of them are like flexing, right? Like, this is what you do with Claude. This is what you do with Gemini, right? But one of them was, it had a picture of like multiple schedules of all the sports teams, and you take a picture and it uploads it to your calendar. Do you know how many hours of my life, probably days of my life, I have spent putting the school calendar into the family calendar, putting all the sports team stuff? Like, it's like they have like all the stupid organizational stuff that's going to be so easy for moms nowadays. Like, even
summer camps, organizing summer camps with everybody's friends.
Like, you could probably write a bot to, sign up for soccer the second that it opens up, because I mean, we all had to like block it out on our calendars and make sure that we didn't have conflicting meetings. Because if you were not in the first 60 seconds, you didn't get signed up for a team. And soccer is like how the city runs, and it's crazy. And so I think, and even with, the nursing apps that they have now, you have to track it. Like, I used to track it in a digital note on my phone, and I thought, wow, how lucky am I? And now, like everything, right? You can track their poop and like how much they ate and all the stuff that you need when they're little. It's just, I think what AI is going to bring to parenting, not that AI can parent for you, but even just like, hey, AI, I've got my kids for the next 12 weeks of summer. They're this ages and they need to work on this. Give me some fun ideas. Like, I might have actually homeschooled my kids if AI was around at that time, just because it would have been so much easier to come up with lesson plans.
And to your point about that, Alexis, my 19-year-old is autistic, and we have some, real challenges around communication. She's verbal, but we have some real challenges around communication on particular issues where I am so neurotypical and so not black and white. And as an autistic young woman, she is very black and white. And so I will often reach out to, AI on that mum front and go, hang on, we've got this challenge we're trying to solve, or this is something we're trying to suggest we do. How do I articulate that in the right way that actually does get that to help to make my message really clear and get my message across? And from that mum perspective, it's incredibly powerful to be able to tap into those almost human elements of AI to make the human conversations happen a whole lot easier.
I mean, my son is high functioning autistic. He's taking CAD right now.
Yeah.
And he's not an engineer, but he's in an upper division engineering class because he thought it would be fun, and he convinced the engineering department he needed to be able to take it because the students that he's the TA for are going to have questions. And you tell he's a little different. And he screwed up the first 5 homework assignments because he did not understand the instructions that the professor was giving. Because my son sees CAD as a language, not as a tool. Not surprising, given that he is not neurotypical. And when we were trying to problem solve, what we came up with was feed Claude all of the rubric for the class, all of the instructions for the homework assignments. And Claude translated it into something he could understand. And then what apparently was supposed to happen was kind of like a math problem. You show your work. Again, my son thinks showing your work is stupid. Like, I've made the project in CAD. It does exactly what you want me to do. I do not see the problem here. He had Claude pull out stills from the video of the CAD, what he created.
I love it.
And tag it all, which is what the professor wanted. Because he thought it was dumb, and it is kind of donkey work. Claude does that for him. Now, guess what? He's getting an A.
Yeah.
Not because he couldn't do the work, but because he needed somebody to translate the instructions,
Right.
which was written for engineering students. And he's not an engineering student. He's clever when he wants to be. But I think parenting in the age of AI, great opportunity, and also really scary.
Yeah, I feel like we have to just be very intentional. I mean, that's what I think is so amazing and powerful about the book is the intentionality, because all of the things and the pillars, when you think about it, they're all very human things. They're actually what makes us human. The relationships, how we think of, the difference we make for others, what our superpowers, what is that unique knowledge or insights we have. And, I always think back that if I did not have my mentors, like I actually didn't really think about mentorship. Like I think I must have been easily in my early 30s before mentors really became a role in my life. Like I was always too busy doing my work or kind of just I didn't really reach out or have mentors. And it wasn't until I was working that someone said, Lydia, you should really have a mentor to guide you as you think of your leadership journey. What do you mean by this? And then I had a mentor. And ever since then, like I've had my mentors, I call them my personal board of advisors who I go to for different things. And I think that's what Creator Capitalist is. It's almost this idea, framework for mentorship, because I don't think that if I didn't have my mentors, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like I really believe that in Categories Design Academy. I would not be where I am today. And I think that the information in the book is about empowering, this next generation to really be intentional in a way that maybe I don't want to say collectively we, but like I know I was not intentional about who is my network of people. It came very late, much later in life. Even financial capital, I had, paid for college and law school on my own, but I don't want my kids like to have to, we worked really hard to be able so that they would not have to do that. Although they have to they have to work, but I want them in their future to think about what do I do to lay the groundwork so that I can be comfortable in my life and do things that make me happy. Just all these other aspects of the book, like building those relationships and people in your life. And there isn't, and I think for women too, who want to get back to the workforce, if that's what their next step or build their own creator capitalist is, what is the path? I think the book and this idea of these pillars are a framework to do that. Because I know that certainly I can speak to myself. I did not have that level of intentionality early in my career or in my life. I just didn't have that. My family was all like work, get, work ethic and grind it through. And, and that had a number of consequences. We don't need to get into but it's probably why I decided to do my own thing now. But I will say that that's what I think is the difference is intentionality. Being very, very intentional.
As much as we can, right? Because I'm the first person in my family to go to college and graduate from college. It wasn't even an option when I was growing up. We never talked about college. There were no books in the house. I didn't have any thought that college was even an option. And if it weren't for my husband, whose family was like, no, you're going to college whether you like it or not. I'm like, oh, that's an option? okay, how do I do that? And work my way through and do all of that. So sometimes we're just thrown into something and we make the best of it. But I agree with you, Lydia. If we can have that intention with helping our kids become creator capitalists or follow whatever they need to follow, college is great, go for it. Not necessary anymore because of our world the way it is, but it depends on your family and whether you feel it's necessary for your kids or not. But we have that option. We absolutely have that option. So how can we help our kids be intentional with this whole creator capitalist that we're talking about? How can we guide them in their intentionality about this?
Mary, that's a great question because, like, when do you think you became intentional?
When I started my first business, and this was like 2003, my kids were 18 months and 4, and it was necessity. Right? Invention is the mother of all, necessity is the mother of all invention. And I had to figure it out. I had to figure out how, because I stayed home. And so I had to figure out how was I going to get the work done that I needed to get done. And this was a physical product. So I actually had a physical thing I had to make. How was I going to do that? And not just have my kids sit in front of TV all day so that I could do that. How was I going to do that? That's the first time I had to actually be intentional about it and figure out. I put a little kid desk in my office so that they had one of the first little computers with a Bob the Builder like piece that sat over the keyboard so that they could push certain parts on the Bob the Builder that would push certain keys that would make something happen on a Windows 98 computer. Yes, I'm dating myself. But that was the fun of it, right? That was how I could have them learn and grow and use technology the way it was now while I worked. And then I worked at night when they went to bed. So figure it out is kind of my intentionality of it.
Yeah, Mary Kathryn, you know what I was going to say is the way I think about it is, what are the goals that you have? Like, what do you want to, I think about that sort of vision casting. And, sometimes with my daughter, I do it especially because I think she's a young woman that's going to go out into the world, and forge her path. And I think especially for women, we need to amplify, support, mentor, and invest in women because it is not getting easier for women. In fact, and I'll say this before I kind of think about how I kind of help forge that intentionality is that, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I gave a talk at Extraordinary Women in Tech. And at the time, my last slide, I said, my dream is that in 5 years, women will receive 50% of investment. At the time, it was 9%. Today, it is less than 2%. So we are going very, very backwards. And I think about my daughter and, and her future. And so when I think of that intentionality, I do say to her when she talks to me about her hopes and dreams, think about the people in your life that will sponsor, mentor, guide, empower, invest in you if that's the day will come. Think about the relationships you're forging and what that means and who you are and what you give back. She does a lot of volunteering. I'm so proud of the work what she does in that regard. But she's building her reputational capital, even though she may not think of it that way. I think I'm trying to instill that without her thinking I'm like, being the mom. But it is things I think about. I go because we may not have had those people in our lives telling us that. I'm first gen, first to go to college. And I mean, my parents didn't think that way. It wasn't anything bad. They just didn't think, Lydia, think about your network. Like that was just not who
It
they
was
were.
survival.
Yeah, I feel like we have that ability now to share this. And I think with women, I go back to women who are also trying to look at transitions in their own careers, whether it was a mom who worked at home who now is saying, I'm ready. My kids are done with school and I'm ready to go forward. I'll give you a great example. A woman I volunteered with for years. She was the treasurer. She had a huge budget. She managed fundraising budget. And now she wants to go to the workforce. And we were talking. She said, Lydia, what do I do next? I said, you have a lot of financial know-how. You built that through your volunteer effort. You built that through the nonprofit that you help manage. But in her mind, she may not have thought of it that way. You know?
I think that's actually a really good point. Is being a creative capitalist, you have this amazing lens that you look at other people's what other people are doing, and I think it's almost like an obligation to help translate people's skills into those creative capitalist pillars, where you can say, "Hey, I see this in you. I see what you do." That absolutely, that's a skill that translates to you choosing this career capitalist path. And I think that's for both, I think our peers as mums who have brought up, been previously obviously in the workforce and then taken time off the kids, but then also as mums to our children, because I think my experience has been that translating of, hey, you've got this skill. My daughter does volunteering for a horse riding school that she loves, and that has translated. I was sort of saying that is actually, that's a creative capitalist skill that you can then translate to real life and to your resume. When you start working, that's something you don't really think it's anything, but that's actually really powerful. And the skill to translate that, I think, is really important.
I
I
think
think you have a new business here, ladies, helping people translate this and then getting other people to take it seriously.
Yeah.
Because those skills that people learn in a volunteer role and managing a household and managing children and managing all of those other things are really valuable. But are they taken seriously in a workplace? Because you don't, maybe it's just, hey, create a company name and don't tell anybody that that's the name of your company, which is actually just managing your house and all your volunteer work. Because I think that's really hard. That is, as I'm thinking back, I am kind of relaunching now, having had a big transition in my life. And I can tell you 100%, 3 years ago, I didn't think I had a superpower, right? And I was running a company. I have multiple degrees. I mean, my house, it was never an option that you weren't going to go to college, right? I was going. It was never discussed the other way. But I was raised to be a corporate wife. Like, I can throw a hell of a cocktail party. And that is what my mom did. And it was never something I wanted to do. But the idea of how would I do this differently? How would I recommend people do it? Wow, those are big questions to ask and answer. And I think we all have those skills. If I was going to say to anybody, go and just try a bunch of things till you find one that will feel right. And I think that idea of I like my idea of coming up with a company name and just writing it as if you were working for that company. And what would you say you did? And what did you love about it? What did you hate about it?
So
I
I
love
worked
that,
with
Jennifer. I
a
love that.
professional coach before I jumped in, and she had me write a letter to myself from 5 years in the future to today and describe everything. And how I realized I needed to start a business was, I painted so much detail about all these different parts of my life and totally freaked myself out that my kids were 5 years older, and like talking about all the things that they had accomplished. And I just kind of like really skimmed over the whole career part. And I was like, okay, so clearly I got to dive into that. What I will say is I wanted to start my own business back in 2009. And someone had said, you already have a baby. My oldest was 1 year old at the time. And they said, you already have a baby. Having a business is like having your own baby. And I was dumb and I listened. And that is my biggest regret, that I didn't start sooner, because I started my business in 2018. And there was a lot of pain, trying to find your place. So really what I would say is, just like category design isn't for everybody, only 10% are even open to it. And maybe only 1 or 5%, I don't remember what the stats are, will actually do it. But being a creator capitalist, it's a state of mind, and you have to believe in yourself. And so it's really just so important to say, this freedom that comes with creating what I want to do, when I want to do it, with who I want to do it, and how I want to do it, that's got to be the most important thing for you. I'm in the middle of a divorce, and financial stability is a huge fear of many people. And that's what weeds a lot of people out of it. And I would just encourage all of the women who are even considering this. If you're even thinking about it, go after it. Don't lose time. It doesn't have to be perfect. You'll find the value that you create, which is what creator capitalism is all about, and getting it to the right people and doing it in your own unique way, niching down and creating that that solution to a problem in a way that nobody else has done. And then we all benefit from it. We all do. So I'm really excited. I think it is going to grow. I think the amount of entrepreneurs are going to grow. I think we're going to see much more creativity in the business world. We're going to see people getting really specific about the problems that they solve and who and how and what. And it's just going to be really exciting. I'm just glad I'm in it because I'm not leaving it. And the other thing I'll say is the past 8 years, has it been easy? God, no. But have I loved it every single day? And yes. And I have never, ever thought, I'm really sorry that I did this.
No. Oh my goodness. Okay.
It's awesome.
I love this whole idea. And I think I just have to add, I think it was Christopher or somewhere in one of the books, I've read all of them and their voices all come together, right? So, but one of the things is we're taught to value things.
Yes.
We're taught what to value and what their value is. A piece of paper as money. We have been told that has a value. That is the number one thing I would recommend to any mom looking at the future and feeling afraid. And feeling like all I've got is volunteer work, or all I've got is this little job I did here, or that job here, and it doesn't look like anything's connected, and I don't have a straight path to get me to partner, and all this kind of whatever you're thinking that you don't have, look at the value you actually do have. Turn it around. I love what you said, Jennifer, is make it a business name. You do have value. It's just someone else is telling you it's not valuable, and it is. Every day we wake up and we face the day and we solve problems and we do the things we have to do every day, we have brought value. We have created something. So if we can take that and look at it from that value perspective instead of just diminishing it, actually value it and look at the skills we honed and the successes we had and the lessons we learned and make that our fingerprint, make that actually who we are and bring that to our superpower for the business we want to create, for the job we want to create, or because I've created jobs too, right? I mean, my current job I have my first W-2 job in over 20 years. And I created it because I was excited about this company that I was contracting for. And they said, okay, what job would you like? What would be your position? And I said, this is the position I'd like. I want to be CXO. And they said, okay. What? I was able to do that? Of course. Any of us can do that. I didn't think I could at first, but they said yes. All you have to do is try and take that value you've created, turn it around from thinking that it's not valuable and thinking no one will really see the value in it. Like your example, Lydia, of the person who was volunteering. That is an incredible value. We can use that. Every woman who hears our voice and man, but mostly women because yes, we are the backbone. You take that value. Don't let anyone tell you it's not valuable because it is. If you need to hear someone tell you it's valuable, come to see us and we will tell you.
Yeah, we'll all tell you.
We will
tell you it's valuable.
It is absolutely valuable. You can do something with it. You should do something with it if you want to. And yes, it's scary, but do it anyway.
Yeah, the value of your value.
That's it.
You nailed it, Mary Kathryn. I mean, I think you said it better than I certainly could have. It is, for me, that was getting into the Category Design Academy. Like, I knew I needed to be there. They did not know that I needed to be there, but I knew that I needed to be there.
Same here.
Because I needed somebody to tell me that I had value and that I was able to find it. This is what I love about the Creator Capitalist book and the things that I have learned over the last 3 years in hanging out with all the pirates is the structure and the way to think. And maybe that's because I'm a person who needs structure and needs a way to approach problems. And I went through the first Category Design Academy was the longest. And I went through the first month about 4 times. in trying to find what my superpower was. And I probably only figured it out reading Creator Capitalist and starting it 8 months ago. And I have pivoted, I don't know how many times as I try to figure it out. But, having value and knowing that you have value and finding people who can tell you you have value and show you have value. Your personal board of directors that is there to support you, and coming up with a way to communicate that to other people and to yourself. Because I think it's really easy when you spend all your time raising children, which is an incredibly important and valuable role. And in our Western society, we place less value on that. It is awful to say, well, just a stay-at-home mom. Like, sorry? Like, if you told some software engineer here in the valley that you're going to go work 70 hours a week, and then you're going to go home and work another 60,
and no pay
managing
for
all
the
of that.
extra 60.
Yeah, and you don't get paid.
Yeah, no.
They'd all look at you and go, there is no way I'm doing that. And even people who I know who say, we are raising our children together. If you sit down with mom and say, let's just break this down. Let's go over everything you do and everything your partner does. It is not 50-50 usually.
No.
And there could be a lot of reasons for that. Like, I have a very, very close friend who decided to go back to work, and her husband was a stay-at-home dad. It drove her nuts because he was not parenting the way she would have parented. I'm like, hey, I love you. You're my bestie, but you got to make some choices, babe.
Let it go.
Like, you either let him be the parent or you stop doing what you love doing.
Yeah.
And you be the parent. But you can't tell him what to do all the time.
Yeah.
And it took her a while to figure that out. Like any good attorney, prosecutor,
Type
she
A.
was used to big time. And, that is just the reality of the world we live in. And I think making sure you have that board of directors, that you have a structure, whether it's the creator capitalist structure or some other structure, to help you see your value is super important.
Yeah, and we don't have to take that on, right? We don't have to wear that diminishing, that you're just a mom or no, we don't have to wear that. We can choose not to wear it. We can choose to say, yes, I am a mom and this is my value. We don't have to accept it from any, I'm done. Sorry, I am done.
Yeah.
Because it's over. I'm no longer accepting any of that. You can share your opinion with me, but it's really none of my business. So
not my problem.
No.
Not my circus, not my monkey.
That's right.
But I wonder if you are a young woman in your mid-20s to 40 with young children. Like, I was much older. My son was born when I was 40. What are you able to do that? Do you have the comfort and the confidence to be able to say,
that's why we're
here?
That's why the next generation is here to help and to say, because no, when I was in my 20s, you could not have told me that. That was me and and again, we all started in different places along this journey. And usually our kids, we have provided an environment where they started a little further on than we did, right? They were able to not have to do the things that we had to do to be able to create success. We help them start a little further along. So each generation, hopefully that's what we do. We help them start a little further along. They're still going to have to learn their lessons. They're still going to have to do their things. But I love this whole personal board of directors. That's, if you can find that. And there's lots of mompreneur, right? That's the word that was coined when I was first becoming a mom and an entrepreneur at the same time. There's lots of communities, lots of them. That, they sell stuff. They try and promote each other, but they can also be there to talk about these things and really help us when we're younger, help the younger generation understand value and figure out superpowers. And there's Category Design Academy to be able to join and see. I did the same thing, Jennifer. I probably went through the first 2 months, at least 5 times. At least. trying to map this out, trying to figure it out. And then finally, when it clicks, it's like, again, Einstein's, and I'm going to super botch this one too. There's a quote from Einstein that says, if I have an hour to do a problem, I know it's a different time frame. I'm going to spend, excuse me, I'm going to spend like 50 minutes thinking about the problem and 10 minutes doing it, right? Solving it. It's the same concept in anything we learn. Think about it for the majority of the time and then act. Because if you try and act on a little bit, you're not going to hit it. Even like an archer, 1 degree, and you're talking, 100 yards, you miss the target completely. Yeah, I'm using all kinds of metaphors, but you get the idea. I love that idea.
Okay, so we've got it for everybody. They just need to listen to us.
That's
the
it.
first thing they need to do is create a company by company name. It doesn't need to be anything fancy or formal. Then they need to find their personal board of directors, and then they need a structure for just starting to think about it. And that personal board of directors can come from lots of different places.
Yeah.
But I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
I wish I'd done that.
Yeah.
I wish somebody would do that for me. And I would love to, be able to say, I wonder if you can have, if you've got a 20-year-old, can they create a personal board of directors?
They should.
How about that?
I don't see why not.
How about that?
We used to call it family.
Yeah.
And I think
but family's different now.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your people you go to when you need to work through goals, things that you want to achieve. I mean, when I think of mine, they're people that I admire, who are like, wow, like they have accomplished this and this is what I need their guidance on. And sometimes they serve different purposes or roles, but they're the people that I know I can talk to and who are looking out for my best interests, who are going to give me real feedback, who are going to be who are going to tell me how it is. Like I trust them, right? And it's because, especially I would say as a woman who was, as I was building my career in tech, and sometimes being the only woman in the room, I needed, and some of these, my board of directors are allies and men that were like, Lydia, this is what you need to do. This is how you have to think about that. Like, who gave me very great feedback. And then women leaders. And not just that, but there's been times like as a mom, right? I was not the mom that could be at every event. I was not the mom that I was on the road a lot. I racked up thousands of miles, and because I was working. And so I have moms who I would ask for advice and guidance, and I still do, right? Because we're all learning and growing.
And you guys are brilliant.
Right? Yeah.
But I get to hang out with really brilliant people. This is why I like creator capitalism and category design, because I get to hang out with all these really smart people.
One time my son think about this. There were 2 things I always think about when he was little. One time he said, oh yeah, my mom's a typist, because he would.
The best.
And then I'll never forget one time he came up to me and said, Mom, I need to know how are the deals doing? And I went, what? And it's got the photo of the deals. He would mimic everything I said. I mean, it was hilarious. And my daughter, I loved one day, she built a Shopify site because she wanted to start to sell vintage clothes and things like that. And she said, Mom, the only problem I'm having is I have to figure out my category. I went, oh, wow. She goes, because I don't want to with everybody.
There you go. They're listening. They're listening. You don't know they're listening, but they are.
But they are
totally listening.
Totally listening. Sure.
I say that I think for all of us, finding the unlock, what is the outcomes? That's always the biggest thing.
I was just going to say, as a creator capitalist and a creator capitalist mom, I really think throwing down that rope is a real key part of that to not only our kids with, the amazing way we've learned to, to build our creator capitalist sort of skills with AI, but also to those other mums and those sort of those peers are the absolute key. It's a hugely important part of being a creator capitalist, I think.
Abso-flippin'-lutely.
Well, moms, thank you for being here. You guys are all so lovely and legendary and just so fabulous to hear talk. So thank you guys for being a part of the pirate ship.
I love that it's across all the different academies.
Yeah.
Like all 3 of them has been fun. So getting to know people.
Yeah, Jessica unfortunately couldn't be here, but yeah, I think it was so fun. I love everyone's stories. It's so great.
It's so good.